Well, hey there, and welcome to this week's LeaderBite that involves a clock, a spoon, and a car. As you stare at the clock, you see 12 hours, you could see 24, maybe it's a week, a month, maybe it's a full business quarter, but it also, 12 numbers could represent the 12 different months that you have throughout your year as well. So if January sits there, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and you think through yourself, okay, if that's a calendar year, what is my most favorite part of the year? And as a kid, if you were to ask a kid what's the most favorite part of your year, potentially they would turn to you and they would say, well, obviously it's going to be in December. What happens in December? Duh, I get presents. Santa's coming, And I know as a kid that as December approaches, in between October and December, I am going to make sure that I am doing my best to keep my behavior so that I can receive the best bang for the buck come December. So a kid really, from October through December, when the parents really start from October through December thinking through Christmas, they are starting to talk about, well, have you been naughty, have you been nice? And what is that going to represent? And I remember as a kid growing up that one of my favorite things to get was my Hot Wheels collection, right? And I would drive it around, pretend this was a track, and what was really cool when I started to grow up, my parents or Santa Claus gave me what they call a Powerhouse to Hot Wheels. And so what would happen is the car would come around the track and would hit this Powerhouse and it would just spin these cars out of control around and around and around and around we go. So the car would hit this thing, it would fly up, maybe lose a little bit of steam, but it would get to the other side of the track again, hit the Powerhouse, and bam, around we go again. And my friend would come over and he'd bring his Powerhouse here and he'd bring his car, and here we'd go. We'd have two cars flying around the track, and if we really felt courageous, we would turn them and face them against each other to blow each other up, right? But as you think and as you step back and say, how does this apply to leadership? What are you talking about, you crazy chica? I'm saying, and we just got done with a really cool session at the lake house with some of my favorite people on how this applies to leadership. So your leadership bite this week is about your most critical job as a manager, and that is performance management. How do you manage the performance of your employees? And as you stare at the calendar year, many of us do that through a formal performance appraisal that happens once a year. And the exact same concepts between the spoon stirring things up, the cars flying around the track applies to your development of your employees. How? Well, as we know, as you have this particular performance appraisal coming up, between October and January, your employee, subconsciously or consciously, will start to turn on the behaviors knowing that that's around the corner. You, as a keen eye, because you're doing work all throughout the year, suddenly turn your focus on the employee between these months, knowing that this is right around the corner. And so what does that do? Well, as a Powerhouse person, you know that once they hit this running, you've given them new strategies, new goals, new priorities, and they continue to fly around, but lose a bit of steam as they get towards the end of the year. So the question to you is, as a great manager, and if that's your number one critical skill to do, develop your people, encourage your people, and have their performance increase over time, why wouldn't you include another Powerhouse bucket? So that when they got done with January and they were all fired up and they're flying around through April, they hit July and you have another, whether it be formal or informal, sit-down conversation talking about what you talked about in January. Therefore now, you have your eye on them through here, and they are performing through here and through this section here. And we know that when you get to July, you look back on what you talked about at the Powerhouse of January, right? And we call that great feedback, because here it is, you've installed goals, they've zoomed around the track, and around July again, you're now looking back and it's called feedback. But also after the feedback, you can give them this. You can give them a little bit of coaching to help them get back on their way, on track, and fire up through January. Something really interesting to think about, because many great managers say that the once upon a time, the one time a year, the formal isn't up because it takes so much time. But a really, really good manager, potentially 4 times a year, will install these Powerhouses so that the number one meeting a year takes less time because we've talked about it all the way through the calendar. Something to think about, are you or are you not a Powerhouse manager? Do you or do you not have a Powerhouse manager working for you? And how can you stir it up moving into the next year so that you can continue to coach and feedback your people?